Yo, what's going on, YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy, Kevin Forte, and we are taking a look today at the free agency frenzy. A lot of stuff happened today. We're going to go over most of the signings on the day. I'm not going to go over every single one, but we're going to try and go through as many as we can. So I have a whole list here throughout the video for you guys to take a look. So we're going to go team by team here. We're going to start off with the Ducks. 3-year deal for Frankie Vatrano. That was their big pickup today. The Ducks were quiet. I think this is a good pickup, though. They're probably going to see him play in the top 6, but we'll see where this goes. I don't think the Ducks are done yet. They have a lot of cap space. I think they're going to keep moving. I don't think that is it for them. Arizona Coyotes made some depth signings. They bring in Troy Stecher, Josh Brown, Nick Bukestad, and they also brought in John Gillies. So a couple of depth additions to blue liners, Bukestad, and a goaltender in Gillies. Josh Brown, I think, is one of the diamonds in the rough here in free agency. Again, some people may disagree, but I think Josh Brown played very well in Ottawa despite a team that wasn't very good. I think that was a really good pickup for the Yotes. We'll see what happens next season. The Buffalo Sabres went out and did a little bit more re-signing than actually going out and getting guys, but they did do some things, and we'll talk about that. Vinny Hinostroza and Victor Olofsson return on re-signed contracts. Good contracts overall. 1-year deal for Hinostroza, 2-year deal for Olofsson. I think that's a fair number for both of them. Fair term. We'll see how it plays out. They also bring in Ilya Lyubushkin to help out that blue line. A great addition there. So we're seeing some depth on the blue line here, which I think they desperately needed. And they also bring in Eric Comrie. So Comrie, this really helps out UPL, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, who is their goalie prospect, the goalie of the future, as some may say. But Eric Comrie and Craig Anderson will likely be the goalie tandem starting next season. Allow UPL to develop in Rochester. I think that's a great sign. And they kind of pulled the rug out from the Jets in that regard. I think that was a great pickup for them. The Calgary Flames had a tough day, right? They lose Gaudreau, but they were able to bring back Nikita Zadorov, right, which was big. And we saw how good he was with Goodbranson on a shutdown pair last year. One of the best shutdown defensive pairs in the league last season. They're really able to keep one of those parts. They also bring in Kevin Rooney as some depth to their bottom 6. $1.2 million. I think that's a fair contract there. 2-year deal. So the Flames were quiet for the most part. Not getting too reactionary for losing Gaudreau, and I think that might be a good thing for them. The Chicago Blackhawks, a lot of prove-it deals, 1-year deals for most of these guys, and a lot of these salary numbers may seem high, but that's because the Blackhawks have to get to the cap floor. And even with the Duncan Keith retirement and some of their other things, they need to get to the cap floor. So they signed Max Domi and Andreas Athanasiou each to prove-it deals that are $3 million each. So they're going to be living handsomely there. They also signed Colin Blackwell to a pretty lucrative contract considering he's more of a third, fourth line guy. Again, the Blackhawks in a rebuild, just trying to bring bodies back in. It makes sense they did what they did, but we'll see what happens with some of those other guys like Athanasiou and Domi. Can they find their game again? The Colorado Avalanche were a team that was more about keeping guys, right, instead of letting them go to free agency. That was their win. They bring back Darren Helm, Josh Manson, and Arturi Lehkonen. So a couple big signings there for them. Great job by the Avalanche. Joe Sakic has wanted Lehkonen all year. He got his guy, able to re-sign him this summer. I don't know where the Avs have the cap space, but they're getting things done. Manson was projected to go to Anaheim. He sticks around. Some really good signings there for them. And obviously Lehkonen has a great tie there with Mikko Rantanen. I think that had a lot of say in him wanting to stick around. The Columbus Blue Jackets made the splash of the day, bringing in Eric Goodbranson. 4-year deal, $16 million. What a crazy loaded contract for a guy that has gotten bought out twice already. Why don't we give him another big ticket? I just don't get why teams... Listen, he's a big body. He was a former first overall pick or top 5 pick, whatever it was. I get it. Why, though? This one's going to hurt the Blue Jackets down the road. They might get some returns here in year 1, And the funny thing is, his number is 44, and you put 4 years, $4 million per year, it's 44. Kind of interesting. I don't know if he did that on purpose, but listen, if his agent was able to get that 4 out of 4, I think he'll gladly take that. That's his new lucky number. And then, of course, all kidding aside, I mean, they bring in Johnny Gaudreau. I mean, that's, I don't know what else to say, right? They bring in two Flames. Johnny Hockey signs a 7-year deal, $9.75 million per season. He took less because Calgary had offered more and New Jersey had offered way more. And he said no to both those teams. The Islanders gave a similar number to Columbus, but he decided to go to the Blue Jackets. As an Islander fan, I'm destroyed. But this is something we've gotten used to. If you look at the Islanders' track record, I'll be doing a video on that. The Islanders don't do well in free agency, especially under Lou Lamoriello. It's almost more of a fear factor than getting excited for at this point. But yeah, he signs with the Jackets. Really exciting for him. Best of luck. And this is, again, he gets, Jarmo Kekalainen gets a guy that's going to, again, I hate to say this, but he's going to replace Panarin in the sense that he's that scoring, franchise-type player you build around. And you also have Erik Goodbranson, right, who can help out that top four defense. And is, you know, again, to a lesser extent, kind of replaces David Savard, in my opinion. So I think that's a good pickup there. We'll see how it goes for the Jackets because that is a tough Metropolitan Division, and they got a lot better today. That was a win for them. The Dallas Stars bring in Mason Marchment. Now, the thing with Marchment, he's 27 years old. He's only played in 91 games in the National Hockey League, but his numbers are good. He's a really, in terms of points per game, one of the best in the entire league. But again, he's only played 91 games, so kind of hard to figure out where he gauges. Jim Nill could look like a genius next year with this contract, or he's going to look like an idiot and have to buy it out in 2 or 3 years. But we'll see what happens. Hopefully the best for Mason Marchment. He's in the prime of his NHL career. He's worked very hard to get here. We'll see how things work out. But that was kind of it for Dallas. Detroit Red Wings, though, Steve Yzerman and the Yzer plan are fully underway, and they made a bunch of signings, bringing in Michigander Andrew Kopp. That's the first guy off the board we saw. Really good pickup there, 28-year-old center. He had 21 goals last year, 53 points. Really solid pickup for the Wings, and they get another Michigander down the middle. You have Dylan Larkin and Andrew Kopp. It allows some of those younger guys like Rasmussen and some of those other guys like you would hope Zadina playing on the wing. He gets an opportunity to play with Kopp. Really good centers in order for a guy like Zadina to play better, because I think Red Wings fans like Zadina for the most part. They want to see him succeed. I think Kopp would hopefully be a line mate and allow him to get more production. Andrew Kopp is a nightmare and is a really good hockey player. He can score. I'm saying that in the best sense. We'll see what happens. Oli Mata comes in on a 1-year deal. Ben Sherratt comes in on a 4-year deal, and that's going to be Mo Sider's new teammate. I think that's a great pickup for them. Ben Sherratt, maybe the term isn't great at 4 years, but I like the overall AAV, 4.75. That's fair, but he's been a good defenseman, so we'll see what happens. Hopefully he could stick it out. Again, injuries you always worry about with big guys like Sherratt, but we'll see what happens. They also bring in Dominic Kubalik, which was another great addition on a 2-year deal, as well as David Perron on a 2-year deal. I really like that pickup. A guy that's in his mid-late 30s. David Perron is a veteran. He has been through it all in the National Hockey League. So he's a guy that can add some scoring touch to the Wings as well. Just overall, I mean, a great fit. They made some big moves here. I like what they did. Overall, big day for the Red Wings. They bring in 3, you could argue, fringe middle, really they're middle 6 forwards. And you also bring in 2 defensemen. That's a win for Stevie Y and the Red Wings. We'll see how it plays out next year. And like I said, Ben Sherratt will be Mo Sider's new defensive partner, because I think that's what they're going to try and do next season. The Edmonton Oilers brought back Evander Kane. It sounded, for the most part, Kane wanted to be an Oiler for the whole time. And he posted something this morning saying, I always wanted to be an Oiler and this and that, and I want to win, and I can do that here. He seemed a lot more mature than people have given him credit for over the last couple weeks, months, years. Listen, he got his ticket. And I think he understands that the Oilers took a chance on him, taking him in the first place. And he gave them the reciprocation of, hey, listen, I want to still play here. I mean, I'm sure playing with Dry and McDavid didn't hurt, but it was nice to see that. Jack Campbell is the solution to the goalie situation in Edmonton. We've talked about it for years. Is Jack Campbell finally the solution? A lot of people are a little bit weary of the dollar and the value. Maybe it should have been closer to 4/4, but Campbell wanted his value. 5/5. He gets a bigger ticket here and a pretty good contract overall. It fits the market. It's a good deal in that sense. And you consider what Washington gave Darcy Kemper. I think the Oilers would take 5/5 here for Jack Campbell. They also bring back Brett Kulak. This was a later in the day situation. Kulak signs a 4-year deal at a lower cap hit, so they gave him more term, but his annual value went down, which did help him get under the cap. Great job there by Holland. And again, nothing really crazy, but he got the guys that he needed to get, and specifically goalie, they were able to do that. The Florida Panthers were kind of interesting. They let Giroux go. They let Sherratt go. But they bring in Colin White. So Colin White comes to the Panthers, 1-year deal, kind of a prove-it deal. Kind of interesting. They also bring in Nick Cousins on a 2-year deal. So they bring in some centers, which I guess they didn't have enough of necessarily. I don't get what that's all about. But that's what the Panthers did. Again, a team that doesn't have a ton of cap space. It makes sense, but is still kind of head-scratching nonetheless. The Los Angeles Kings were fairly quiet today. They had 2 guys re-sign, Brendan Lemieux on a 1-year deal, as well as veteran defenseman Alexander Edler. 2 guys that wanted to play for the Kings, and the Kings were able to get them for pretty cheap. I think it's a good job here by the staff there in LA finding a way to get these guys back, and that was kind of it. They made their moves, right? They brought in Kevin Fiala, that you could consider a free agent acquisition. That was their big push, and I think right now they like where they're at. They like their prospects, and unless they make a big trade, I think the Kings will be fairly quiet the rest of the summer. Now, the New Jersey Devils, it was a tough day for the Devils, right? Tough day for metropolitan teams, the Islanders, the Flyers, and the Devils. Brendan Smith signs on a 2-year deal, a really good cap hit overall. I think that's a very more than fair contract. I don't think Brendan Smith was seeing the offers that maybe he was hoping for, but he signs a 2-year deal, so he gets a little stability. He's going to help be a veteran mentor to some of those younger guys, maybe a Ty Smith next year. I think that's a good pickup there. The New York Rangers were kind of quiet too, but they did pick up 3 guys, 2 goalies, and a big-name center. So they bring in Vinny Trocheck on a 7-year deal, $5.625 per season. The 29-year-old center is the Rangers' solution down the middle. Now, is he better than Andrew Kopp? I think there's arguments to be made for that. I do think Andrew Kopp long-term is the better player, but Vincent Trocheck goes to the Rangers. Again, I think he's one of those guys that the Rangers just wanted a different guy than Kopp, which, whatever, it is what it is, but kind of interesting to see they went that route. They also bring in on 1-year deal for Yaroslav Halak and a 2-year deal for Louis Domingue, the guy that sniped them in the first round of the playoffs, and they ultimately ended up finishing off Louis Domingue in the playoffs. Theory, did he purposely lose to the Rangers so they would sign him? I don't know. No, all kidding aside, I think this is a good pickup for the Rangers. They pick up 2 veteran goalies, and I don't think they're comfortable with anybody behind that. They let go of Keith Kincaid. He ended up signing elsewhere. He's in Boston now. So this is the new tandem. It's Shesterkin, Halak, Domingue, and I think Matt Huska. So that's the Rangers goalie situation. I think that's a pretty good day for the Rangers. Again, they didn't get Kadri, but they did enough. And again, sometimes that's all you need to do. You don't have to take the big sexy name off the board. You just need to get the guy that's going to help you win. And Trocheck does that. So we're going to skip the Islanders because, of course, Lou Lamoriello doesn't know how to make moves. So we're going to take a look at the Ottawa Senators, who did have a very good offseason so far. Claude Giroux signs a 3-year deal in Ottawa. This has been kind of written in the stone for a while now. but he made it official. G is a member of the Sens. Very exciting. We'll see how things go there, but I know Dorian was very excited to have Claude Giroux come in there. And that was really it for the Senators. The Philadelphia Flyers, yes, it is not the guy you were hoping to see in Johnny Hockey Gaudreau, but they bring back Justin Braun, a good veteran defenseman. He'll be back on the Flyers' blue line in the fall. And this has been talked about for a while, but the Philadelphia Flyers want more grit. And what do you do when you want to add more grit and you're under John Tortorella? You add Nicolas Deslauriers, 2-year deal, 1.9 per year, a little bit high. But again, all things considered, it's a 2-year deal. So worst case, you're giving $3.8 million, 2-year deal. Suck it up. The Flyers have the cap space in the future, hopefully. So it's not going to hurt them that much, right? They're not trying to win a cup this year. So Nicolas Deslauriers, really good fit for them. The number, I'm not a fan of, but as a player, he is a good hockey player. It's just everybody's going to look at that number and say, yeah, he's a little overpaid. Now, moving down the Keystone State, we have the Pittsburgh Penguins. And it was all about guys extending, right? They extended Raquel. They extended Letang. They also bring back Evgeny Malkin. And it did not look like that yesterday. Malkin returns to the team, 4-year deal, just a shade over $6 million per season. A good contract overall. I'll take him for 6. I think a lot of people would have taken or tried to get him for $8 million per season. I think that is a definite pay cut in that sense. But he wanted his 4 years. He wanted some stability and longevity in his contract. He was able to get that, and this is probably it for those guys, right? Crosby 3 years, Malkin 4 years, and Letang 8 years. That will be the end of this. Is the era. They will be forever Penguins, unless something crazy happens. I will mention that. Jan Rutta signs on a 3-year deal, and that was it for the Penguins. So the Penguins really just brought in one guy, and that was Rutta. He played well in Tampa. I think that's a good fit for them. The Kraken were pretty busy today, not picking up the big names, but they bring in Justin Schultz. That was an early of the day situation. The 32-year-old defenseman. He was a 25-point defender last year. Justin Schultz is a guy that he's got to play. He's got to be your 4th or 5th defenseman. Anywhere further up than that, you do worry. He's not a top 3 guy, but a 4th or 5th D-man. Either your second best guy on the second pairing or your best guy on the third pair. So I think that's a good pickup for them. They also bring in Andre Burakovsky, 5-year deal, $5.5 million per year. A really good contract. I think this is really a good pickup by Ron Francis. So again, another team where they pick up the scoring forward, a guy that could literally put the puck through the net like Burakovsky did with the Avalanche in the playoffs, and Justin Schultz, who can help bolster up that blue line, make them a little bit more mobile. So a really good pickup there. Oscar Lindblom signs a 2-year deal in San Jose. He got bought out from the Philadelphia Flyers last week, and there was some, people weren't too thrilled with that, but that's how hockey works sometimes. So good for Lindblom. He was able to get back on his feet. A lot of teams were interested in him because he can score goals. He's going to have an opportunity to do that with the San Jose Sharks. I think that's a perfect fit. I really do like that one. Moving on to the St. Louis Blues, Robert Thomas signs a massive ticket here. 8 years, $64 million over that deal. That's $8 million per season. He had 77 points in 72 games, so over a point per game last season with the Blues. Great pickup there. They also extended Nick Leddy to a 4/4. That's $16 million over 4 seasons for Leddy. Hopefully he gets back to his form he had with the Islanders. We'll have to wait and see. But there is potential in Leddy. Mo Seider just did an interview with Spit and Chicklets, and he was talking about how, Nick Leddy was a good mentor for him. So maybe we'll see something similar to that in St. Louis. Thomas Greiss, another former Red Wing, ends up going to the Blues as well. He will be the backup behind Binnington, and he's a veteran goalie. I think that was a good pickup for them. Nola Chari, who had some interest from multiple teams, the Rangers, the Leafs, ends up going to the Blues. So the Blues round out their team. A 20-goal scorer here in Nola Chari. Pretty good pickup. There's not much to say, but the Blues, they made a lot of moves. They just it was more bodies, right, and depth. And like I said, sometimes it's the moves you don't make where you win on free agency day, and that might have been the situation there. Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is the headline. If it's not Goudreau signing in Columbus, it's the Tampa Bay Lightning locking down all three of their big boys. And we knew that Julien Brisebois was going to put an emphasis on this, but he did that to the fullest extent. Mikhail Sergachev signs an 8-year deal. $8.5 million per season for Sergei. Great pickup here for them. Sergachev's been a really good piece there. And he's going to get more ice time this year without McDonough. So Sergachev comes in. He's going to play in the top 4 on the blue line, probably playing with another guy we're going to mention in a second. I think this is just a perfect fit. And there's not much to say here. He's worth that money, and probably more than that. He's a really good defenseman, one of the better defensemen in the league. So we'll see what happens. Anthony Cirelli also signs an 8-year deal, $6.25 million per season. Again, a fair contract here for Cirelli. He is a really good hockey player and very underrated, I think, in just how stacked that Tampa team is. But between Stamkos, Cirelli, Braden Point, those guys are really, really the core and glue of this group. And Anthony Cirelli, like I said, he could have gotten easily $7.5, $8 million per season on the open market next year. 6.25. Julien Brisebois keeping the low state tax incentives on the table. So really good contract there. And of course, Sergachev's line mate, or his defensive pair, or his partner, Eric Chernak, also gets a max term deal, 8 years at $5.2 million per season. This is a team that everybody says, oh, well, Tampa's going to get old soon, right? You have Kucherov, you have Stamkos, you have Hedman. They're all getting old. They're in their 30s. Yeah, but you also forget that all three of the guys I just mentioned are in their mid to late 20s. And Chernak is one of them. It seems like Chernak's been around forever. But this guy is just, and I think when they traded McDonough, they knew long-term that this was going to be that next McDonough, which you hate to compare guys, especially when they've played together. But Chernak is such a good defenseman that Tampa could not afford to lose him next year. He is just such a down. He's not afraid to get dirty, just tough to play against. Chernak is the example of what gets you deep in a playoff series. And Eric Chernak, perfect fit there. So I'm done glossing Chernak. But again, Tampa did Tampa things. What do you want to say? They re-signed a bunch of guys for very cheap. But that's what you do when you win. It's easier to do that. You also bring in Vlad Namestnikov. He played on the Tampa Bay Lightning a few seasons ago. He comes back to Tampa to maybe try and win a Stanley Cup. We'll see how that goes for him. Ian Cole signs a 1-year deal, $3 million. I'm thinking, where does Tampa have this cap space, right? They just signed those three guys we talked about. $3 million for 1 year for Ian Cole, $2.5 million for Namestnikov. Where are they getting all this money from? Kind of interesting. They also add to the blue line again with Ian Cole. They also bring in Hayden Fleury from Seattle. I think that's a really good pickup for them. They just have so many blue liners, right? Philip Myers, Hayden Fleury, Ian Cole, and what they've already had there, which is incredible, right? Nolan Foote. Is that his name? No, Cal Foote. It's Cal. Cal Foote, Sergachev, Chernak. Is it that big of a loss, right? Again, losing McDonough hurts, but they've definitely compensated most of that. So let's talk about Toronto. I know Leaf fans are going to be fun with this one. Ilya Samsonov signs a 1-year deal. Can Samsonov legitimately play 50-plus games this year for Toronto? I don't think so. Now, I like Samsonov. I'm cheering him on because I watched him in Hershey. I want to see him succeed. But you could tell when he came to North America, he just didn't have it, it seemed like. And I worry that in the limelight of Toronto, that could just bury him. And I hope the best for him. I really do. I want to see him play well. But this is a tough environment, a tough spot for him to go into. So we'll see what happens. They also signed Nicolas Aube-Kubel, who won a Stanley Cup with the Avalanche this year. He was a guy with the Flyers for a very long time. That's probably why the Leafs saw him. Good pickup there. They also bring in Adam Gaudette just to add some depth. He played in Vancouver, ended up in Ottawa last year, and now ends up in Toronto. So a guy that's kind of been bouncing around the league. We'll see if he could get anything in Toronto. Vancouver made some pretty interesting moves. They bring in Curtis Lazar, sign him to a 3-year deal, $1 million per year. I think it's a very good contract, a good depth piece to your team. Nothing crazy, but good depth. They also bring in Ilya Mikheyev. Mikheyev, a 4-year deal, $4.75 per year. I like Mikheyev. I think that was a great addition to the Vancouver Canucks. A guy that's going to add some depth scoring, and that's really what they're hoping for in Vancouver, especially with rumors about who could be going, if that's JT Miller or whoever else you want to throw in there. Really good pickups. They also bring in Colin Delia, which is, again, another goalie to add behind Thatcher Demko. I do like that. The Vegas Golden Knights made a trade. They traded out Max Pacioretty, which allowed any of this to happen in Vegas. They signed Riley Smith, kept him around, $5 million per year. That's a 3-year deal, $15 million over that deal. Overall, good signing there. Michael Hutchinson goes to Vegas as well. We also saw them bring in, I forget his name. Let me find it. Vegas was pretty active when things were all said and done. Jonas Ronberg. They also brought in Brett Howden. They re-signed him. So we'll see how those guys work out. But more depth for Vegas. That's really what it came down to. The Washington Capitals weren't too crazy, but they did bring in 3 guys. Eric Gustafsson, really good specialist on the power play. We'll see if that transpires in Washington. Charlie Lindgren signs as the backup. 3-year deal, $1.1 per year. I think that's a really underrated signing for the Caps and is a really good backup. I think that's a really good fit there. And they also have the starter in that tandem, which is Darcy Kemper, who signed for more money per year than Jack Campbell. 5 years, $5.25. I do worry about this one. If I had to choose between which one's the most likely to fail, Darcy Kemper or Jack Campbell, I think I'm going to go with Darcy Kemper just because of that dollar amount. And a lot of people could argue that in the playoffs, Colorado didn't really need to rely on him. They could have had Michael Hutchinson in there and found a way to get it done, right? So I guess that criticism will be put to the test next year. Is Darcy Kemper as good as his contract says he is, or is he more the latter of what fans think of him? Maybe he just isn't that good and he was just on a really good hockey team, right? So I guess we'll get that figured out. And the Winnipeg Jets, to replace Eric Comrie, kind of a last-minute ditch effort to bring in David Rittich. David Rittich got blown up against the Avalanche in the first round of the series they had earlier this year in the playoffs. So I hope the best for him. Hopefully he could turn it around. He's going to be the backup behind Connor Hellebuck, and we'll see how that works out. But I wouldn't say that's necessarily an upgrade for the Winnipeg Jets. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. What do you think of this year's free agent frenzy? We still have some names on the board. Andre Palat, not signed to this point. Just to quickly mention, what do we got? Ryan Strome ends up going to Anaheim, so add that one to the list. Nazem Kadri hasn't signed. John Klingberg hasn't signed. Andre Palat hasn't signed. So 3 of the top 4 guys are still on the board. So, of course, I'll keep you guys updated throughout this week because I do expect by the end of this week we will have those guys signed. We'll kind of see what happens. Guys, always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.